So when I met my girlfriend, the princess, I was 23 and she was a year older than me. She used to always complain to me about her father. He ruined her life, from what she said. She wanted to go and study the piano, and he forced her into studying Russian. So she spoke several languages, including Russian, of course. And over the years, I often heard her complain about the father and complaining about the fact that her family lost the fortune before she was born during the war. And it was only near the end of our relationship that she suddenly included her mother and started complaining about her mother, who also ruined her life. And of course, when we broke up, she complained about me ruining her life. She said she wasted her life away with me. She's always finding someone or somebody to complain about. She never accepted the blame it was on her, because she had the intelligence to go out and study whatever she wanted to. She just didn't have the get up and go. During the war, as you probably know, if you know a little bit about history, Poland, the Germans marched in there very quickly. They didn't have a chance. So her family was taken totally by surprise. And one of their friends, a very good friend of the family, also wealthy man, I think he went to Zurich, and they gave him money to put in a bank over there. And he was supposed to contact them with the number so they could access their money eventually after the war. Well, they never saw him again. I'm pretty sure he probably was one of those people who died. But the grandfather, who lived in a huge mansion, I guess they all lived in the same mansion at the time, he had a hole dug behind the mansion and buried huge amounts of gold. Well, her father knew exactly where that gold was buried, and after the war they went back to dig it up, but they found that a airport had been built on the site, and it belonged to the Air Force, and there was guards in there, armed guards. So the ground that the money was, the gold was hidden in, was on the other side of the fence. So I don't know if anyone ever found it, but if they didn't, there's a fortune hidden there, and no one can get near it. But it just shows you how life can go. One minute a family can be terribly, terribly successful financially and suddenly lose it all. In this case, because of the war. I do believe she died of cancer. I heard that she had cancer, and normally when people get cancer they do end up dying fairly quickly, don't they? So she probably didn't even reach the age of 60. Probably died around the age of 55 if she had cancer. Sad. After she fell out of love with me, she very quickly lost contact with me totally. And it's sad, because I like to remain friends, especially with ex-girlfriends. Yeah, very sad. And just a reminder, if you like my videos, please give me a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. Thank you. They did live in a nice flat, I'm told, in Warsaw, a family flat, because the father was quite high up in the army. But it was nothing compared to the lifestyle that they had before the war. When I met her, she was working as a waitress in a cafe in Park Lane. I knew a fellow who I had great respect for, and he told me about lemon tea. So I thought, I'm going to try some lemon tea, and that's when I went into the cafe and chatted her up, you see. All because of lemon tea. It was quite funny. We used to go hitchhiking a lot in those days, in the 70s and 80s. She because she spoke several languages, we would go through places like France and Germany, and she would be speaking to people. It was amazing. And she seemed to pick up languages very quickly. I never forget, in France, a lorry driver stopped and picked us up. And it turned out this Frenchman was drunk, driving a huge lorry. And as we drove along the motorways, he was actually going from side to side, because he would just give up on the wheel, forget the wheel entirely, and start cutting the sausage. Unbelievable. And then offering us food to eat as we, and we're saying, grab the steering wheel quick. You know, I'm saying in English, he's French, he doesn't speak a word of English, and she's having to translate for me. We are, and there was lorries going by, and they was waving their fist at him, but he didn't care because he was drunk. That couldn't happen these days, I don't think. Not with all the police cameras and the police everywhere. But yeah, to this day I still can't believe it. What he, how drunk that man was. Can you imagine leaving the wheel, lorries going over slightly on the motorway at high speed? Unbelievable. And then I used to go hitchhiking myself on my own to Europe and leave the princess behind. And then I run out of money by the time I get back to the coast, and have to get her to get some money to me. It wasn't so easy in those days because you didn't have the internet and things like that. I can't remember how we did it, but we did. Managed to get some money over to me so I could go back on the ferry. But once, for some reason, I don't know what it was, but I had absolutely no money, and I thought, I've got to get on that ferry, and it was on the other side of this fence. I was looking at the ferry, which was tied up against the harbour. So I've seen all these films. I think I've just seen too many films in life. I've seen all these films where people climb over the walls or the fences and then climb up onto the ferry without anyone knowing. Anyway, I climbed over this fence, sneaked up to the ferry, and realised there's someone at the gangplank. So you can't go up the gangplank, you see, there's someone there on guard. So I went over to climb, as I've seen on the TV in films, where people climb up the rope, which holds the ferry to the side, and to the queue. Anyway, when I went to grab a hold of this rope must have been as big as that. I couldn't get my hands around it. So what I did, I got my arms around it instead, and I got up the rope. Can you imagine climbing up the ferry? And then when you get halfway up there, they've got this funnel thing, which is to stop any mice or rats climbing up, you see. And I had to get over that as well, and then carry on up right to the top, and then I hid behind some seats. That's what I did. I laid on the floor, hid behind some seats until the ferry left harbour. And then on the ferry, I got chatting to some of the fellows who were lorry drivers, and I managed to get a lift off the ferry to London, I think. Yeah, pretty good. But it's all changed these days. I mean, a lot of these lorry drivers, they're not allowed to take people because the insurance won't allow it, you see. So things have tightened up so much, taken out the fun of life. But don't let me encourage you to start hitchhiking. It's a dangerous thing. And I was a fella, so it wasn't so bad for me. And I did carry some what you call it, pepper. I carried a pepper pot with me, so if anyone tried anything, they get it in the face. But no, don't do hitchhiking these days. It's just too dangerous, especially if you're a girl. And if you're a man, carry a pepper pot. And don't tell them you've got it. It's got to be a surprise attack, you see. But anyway, that was my life. And in a way, it was more interesting than a lot of people's lives. People who live a normal lifestyle, it can be quite boring when you think about it. She told me in Poland, before the war, the upper classes spent so much time in Paris that they lost their Polish accent. And even in Poland, they would always speak French amongst themselves. And I was quite surprised to find out that the accents of the upper classes and the working class are the same. Not like in England, where we got the posh, jolly good. And a commoner like myself, she said the difference between the way you can tell that a person is from the upper classes, or should I say the intellectual class, is they have a wider vocabulary. Well, I guess that's the same with us as well, isn't it? I suppose it's the same the world over. But she also mentioned that when she would greet her father, she would always approach him in the third person, or greet him in the third person. So it would be like this. Would Daddy like a cup of tea? Would Daddy like to read the paper? Instead of, as we do, the commoners, Dad, do you want a cup of tea? I should have been born into a rich family, shouldn't I, really? Unfortunately, I'm as common as they come. Of course, I made a mistake there, because it's the upper classes. It's nothing to do with riches. It's to do with behaviour. You can be poor and still be an upper class person. And of course, you can be a commoner and be very rich. In that case, they would call you the new rich or the nouveau rich. In other words, you've got lots of money, but you're as common as muck.